Based on the short story of the same name, Children of the Corn is about a couple, Bert and Vicky, played by Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton, who are driving through cornfields in Nebraska to get to Seattle. They come across the town of Gatlin, which looks like a ghost town, but in reality it is led by a rebellious group of children who killed the adults of the town, and Bert and Vicky are next. While Carpenter managed to make a ridiculous premise like a killer car work for the big screen, this however was not in equally as talented hands. It's actually not the first adaptation of the source material, the first of which was a short film going by the name Disciples of the Crow, which is available on YouTube. This adaptation strayed far from the source material, and I think it was a major detractor. With a feature film, a lot of the stuff from the short story were incredibly stretched out, and long stretches of the film were very boring where next to nothing happened, as well as the fact that the children aren't even that scary and are more over-exaggerated caricatures of what they think creepy children are supposed to be. There's also a bunch of anti-religious elements, with it being Stephen King, of course. It's a very uninteresting movie, which could have been something like Village of the Damned, but fails miserably by creating an uninteresting story with unlikable main characters and hardly anything memorable, with maybe the exception of Isaac. It's just a bland and generic movie about a cult. That's honestly it. The original story was much more interesting and much more depressing than this adaptation. Somehow, though, this fucking movie got 8 sequels, one of which is coming out this year, or maybe by the time of this upload has come out already, along with a TV remake in 2009, which follows the short story much closer, but was panned by audiences. Overall, this film is bland, boring, and uninteresting, and mostly forgettable. It has a couple memorable moments, but not much else. Stay away. Looking back on this movie, it's really not the worst thing ever. I do commend the fact that it's a competent production, and from what I've heard with what has come after, it's not horrible. Maybe if you want to watch something weird and weirdly interesting, I say give it a watch. I wanted to go back to this movie for mainly comparing and contrasting, one with Disciples of the Crow, which I hadn't watched for whatever reason when I did my initial review, and I wanted to bring on another friend to talk about the recent remake that came out this year. But first, let's start with the short film. The short film is similar to the film where it's fine but nothing great. It pretty much adapts the short story almost verbatim, ironically more than the film does, with the exception of the ending. It's entirely possible that the reason that Woodward did not do this was because of budget, but from what I know of the short story, that honestly feels like the most interesting part of the story, and it's weird that they didn't even try to attempt it. Bert and Vicky are assumed to be killed off screen by the end of it due to their engine getting too hot from an ear of corn getting wedged into their grill. The rest of it is okay. The acting is fine, the editing is creative, the music is kinda creepy, and it has some good moments. But it's nothing amazing, and it's about as good as the theatrical film. Speaking of, from what I remember, it was okay. Like a perfectly serviceable little horror flick. I think Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton do a rather good job despite the subpar material, and all the kids try their absolute best. Mainly Isaac, played by John Franklin, although Courtney Gaines as Malachi was also pretty awesome. I just wish they didn't stretch out so much of it. I understand that you have to do that for a feature film based on a short story, but I feel like some things could have been cut or tweaked to make it not feel as drawn out. Just a better paced film is what I mean, I guess. The ending was hilariously bad as well. It just felt so ridiculous and like a big budget Hollywood movie for no real reason. Plus, I liked the whole villain wins ending of the original short story. I just felt it was more interesting. Now, in terms of this franchise, the fact that I even have to say that about a movie about children being obsessed with corn is fucking hilarious. I have not seen any of the sequels or the initial 2009 remake, but I have heard that pretty much every movie after the first one sucks major turds, although the remake tries but still ends up sucking. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the newest film in this franchise, just called Children of the Corn, which came out in March after a 3-year delay due to the pandemic. Alright everyone, this is my buddy Cinematic Sterling. He's going to give us his thoughts on the newest installment of the Children of the Corn franchise. The fact that I still have to say franchise is still alarming to me. But anyway, let's just get through with this. First off, I just want to say, have you seen the original film, any of the sequels, the 2009 remake, or the short film?
I've seen the original. I haven't seen any of the sequels. I saw a little bit of the remake that came out on the Sci-Fi Channel,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any of of the hundreds of sequels. I haven't even read the short story, and I'm a Stephen King fan.
What about the short film Disciples of the Crow?
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that existed until you brought it up.
Okay, cool. Maybe you could watch that on YouTube after this is done. Anyway, so what are your thoughts on the original film in general?
It's not. It honestly, it's not that. It's not really a good movie. It's pretty. It's mediocre at best. I mean, the opening scene is pretty creepy with all the kids like going nuts and killing all the adults in the diner. Like that was a pretty effective scene, but the rest of the movie overall is just bland. Like in terms of other Stephen King adaptations, it doesn't really stick out. You know,
So, in regards to the reboot, remake, reimagining, whatever the fuck they're calling it these days, did you know anything about it going into it? Like the differences, the similarities, plot details, anything of the sort?
honestly, all I really knew was the makers of this movie went out and said this is not going to be based off the short story at all. So it's basically banking off of the name.
Pretty much like all the sequels. What is the film's like greatest weakness? What breaks the movie? Like the worst possible thing about the movie?
Everything. I'm not gonna give away certain details of the movie, but I'm just gonna come out and say for worst movies of the year, this is in the top three.
Okay.
This was shit. Thank God I did not see this movie in theaters when it was doing its limited release Fathom event. Oh boy, I would have been fucking furious, and I'm glad I dodged a bullet just like I did with Firestarter.
I was gonna ask what else is bad about the film, but just let me know your try to avoid spoilers. Just let me know your thoughts on what is totally wrong with this movie.
It is a boring, slow, stupid, unintentionally funny, and poorly written waste of time. Like characters, every single one of them, they're all bland, they're all annoying. I don't like to make fun of child actors, but holy shit, the acting in this movie was atrocious. Not one moment in this movie was scary. I was laughing at all the scary moments. They use CGI in the movie and it looks so fake. There's so much CGI blood and gore.
Okay, so just keep in mind if you want to see this movie for whatever reason, spoilers, skip to this time code so you can avoid spoilers. Continue.
Well, first things first, we see he who walks behind the rose, and he looks like Groot.
But worse, right?
Yes. The he who walks behind the rose, the god they all worship, is basically just Groot made out of corn stalks. And there's a fire that happens, like one of the main characters lights the fire of the main little girl who's the one causing everyone to go crazy. And speaking of which, again, I hate to make fun of child actors, but really, I'm supposed to find this little girl threatening. Not once did I ever find her scary. She sets the cornfield on fire. She comes back at the end, and she looks like Chucky after he got burnt up at the end of the original Child's Play.
Okay.
But anyway, the movie is boring as hell. Half the time I was on my phone. I didn't care about what was happening. There are friends of mine that said that Firestarter is the worst King adaptation. Again, I dodged a ball in that one, so I don't know how bad it is. But in terms of the King adaptations I've seen, or adaptation, since this isn't an adaptation, it's more like a name make. This one was rough.
So, even though I probably already know the answer to this, did this movie do anything good outside of the fact that it ended?
Nothing. I would say, well, their moments are unintentionally funny, but that's not a good thing. You can never say a movie is unintentionally funny and say that's a positive because it's not, because it still fails at what it was intending on doing.
But at least you got some enjoyment in terms of that, right? I got some enjoyment out of that. Maybe, kind of, sort of, not really.
Not really.
All right. So again, I probably already know the answer to this, but better or worse than the original 1983 film?
A lot worse, but again, that's you have mediocre and then you have shit. It's not really say it's not really much of it's not really a glowing endorsement because they both don't work, but one just fails even more at what it was trying to do.
With Children of the Corn 2023, does it try to be more than what it is? Like it acts like it's highbrow or anything, or are they aware it's like schlock?
If they are aware it's schlock, they do a pretty terrible job at it.
But it doesn't act like they're like trying to say like it doesn't act like the Candyman requel where it's like, oh, this is what we're saying is so important. It's just like, okay, this is a movie we made for fun and that's it. It doesn't try to be like artsy or anything, right?
Nah, it's not. It's not like super pretentious, like say the reboot of Candyman or Men or Beau's Afraid.
So with that, does it make you want to rewatch the original or any of the other films in this franchise?
Yeah,
Not even
I don't
like
think I'm losing anything, but
not even like the badness of like oh sure I'll be curious to see what the other films have in store, but you're like nah, fuck this entire franchise at this point.
nah, I don't care. I guess you could say Children of the Corn movies are in the movie graveyard.
I guess so. Um, so since I know for a fact this movie cannot be your worst film of 2023, as we both know what that is, let alone the worst horror film, as that is your worst of the year, would it crack the top 5 of either, not just films or horror films, but like both?
I don't know about like top five like worst movies ever made. I mean, it's definitely
No,
it's definitely on that list.
just for 2023, not worst films you've ever seen or ever made, just for 2023.
Yeah, this is going to be in the top three.
But yeah, so worst horror films and worst films of the year for both lists, it's definitely on there, correct?
Definitely it's in the top. It's in the top five. Like it's in the top three worst movies I've seen all year. It's definitely somewhere in my worst horror movies of all time list.
And then last question, even though again, this is another question I probably already know the answer to, avoid this at all costs or would you weirdly recommend it?
Avoid this movie like the fucking plague.
So, with that, that ends our little interview on the newest addition to the Children of the Corn franchise, even though unfortunately it probably won't be the last. But you know, we can only hope. But that's it for now. Thank you, Cinematic Sterling, for giving us your thoughts, and now you will never have to think of this pile of tripe until we make our worst of the year list on the Cool Kids Movie Review channel. Go check out his channel. Did you do a review of the Children of the Corn on your channel or no?
I did not, but I wrote a review on Letterboxd.
So the Letterboxd review will be in the description below. Again, thank you for your time.
You are very welcome. Don't watch this shit. Watch Evil Dead Rise and watch Talk to Me.
That is all for this video. See you later.